Well, I really wanted to do this Kay Hageman induction, and was pleased when the induction committee asked me if I would do it. Catherine Kay Forbes Hageman was at the Chamber of Commerce for 35 years in the 1950s. Well, she started in 1953, and she served until 1988. She started as a secretary at the Chamber of Commerce, and this is down in the Antlers Hotel. And she worked with George Prescott there, and we're inducting Kay into the Hall of Fame tonight. And I'm gonna keep my remarks relatively brief because we're gonna bring up Dave Forbes, who is Kay's nephew, and he's gonna tell you about his Aunt Kay, and he'll do a better job of it than I will. But let me just say a few things about Kay Hageman. And I know there's people in this room right now who remember Kay pretty well. And she was quite a gal. And you know, if Kay was around, you knew she was around. You knew she was in the room. And she worked at the Chamber at a time when really the Chamber and the Rodeo were one and the same. And I know today at the Driver House, the Chamber's on one side, the Rodeo's on the other side, and we identify them as very closely related groups. But in the 50s and 60s, they were one and the same. And there was one phone. When the phone rang, it was either for the Rodeo or it was for the Chamber, and Kay answered the phone. And so in many ways, she did the job of what we now know today, a chamber manager, but she also did the job that we identified as the executive assistant of the Rodeo. Megan Meeks' job, she did that job too. And I don't reckon she made a lot of money doing that job, but she did a heck of a job. She was the first female manager of the Chamber of Commerce, which was a real pivotal point, I think, in the history of this town and the professional life of this town. And she became manager after George Prescott left. And George didn't leave the Rodeo. He continued to announce the Rodeo, but he left the Chamber office, and Kay then filled in his place and was there for 30 years and did a heck of a job. We're inducting her we have a participant category, and we also have a volunteer category. And we're inducting her in both categories because, frankly, she worked so darn hard and did so much that her profession was turned into 50 or 60 hours a week sometimes. And so in many ways she was a volunteer. She just wanted to do the work, and she did a wonderful job at it. I've got a personal connection to this induction because I remember Kay when I was 5 or 6 years old. I was a posse brat, and I know there's some posse brats in this room here tonight. We're getting kind of old, but we're still posse brats. Our dads rode in the Ellensburg Rodeo posse. And Kay was married to Bob Hageman, and Bob was a member of the Rodeo posse. And I can remember her as a 5 or 6 years old, getting back to that point that when Kay was in the room, you knew she was in the room. And she loved children and was very kind to children and always paid attention to you. And she was a lot of fun and very lively and sociable and witty and bright and intelligent. And there's a lot of members of this family here, nieces and nephews tonight to celebrate this induction. I'm looking at a couple of tables full of Forbeses and Robertsons and Emmerichs and Boyes, and we've got great grandnieces, and we're really glad to see you all here in Ellensburg, and we sure do welcome you back. The fellow who's going to tell you about his Aunt Kay is a friend of mine named Dave Forbes. And Dave and I were in kindergarten together, and then we went to Ellensburg High School together, and then we graduated from Central together, because why would you want to leave Ellensburg for college after all, to stay here, you know, it was so great. So we went to Central and graduated in history together from Central Washington State College. He's, after nearly 40 years, he's retired principal, elementary school principal in Pierce County. And he had a very special relationship with his Aunt Kay. And so I'm going to bring Dave up. I'm going to induct Kay into the Hall of Fame, and then he's going to tell you about his Aunt Kay. Dave Forbes.
Dr. Allen. It's the first time in my life, after 60 years of knowing him, that I've called him Dr. Allen. It's usually Palzo or Mike, or Mike. Anyway, I'd like to thank the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame for this very prestigious recognition. It means so much to myself and my family and Kay's family. I'm honored and grateful to represent her up here. Kay was special. She was more like my mother than she was my aunt growing up here in Ellensburg. Anyway, Katie Forbes Hageman was the youngest of 5 children born to Harold Enoch Forbes and Bessie Vincent Forbes. And you know, folks, she was the only one that was born in a hospital. And I asked Grandpa about that. He had kind of a wry smile and said, nothing to it. Anyway, Grandma and Grandpa were territorial pioneers. Grandpa came in to the valley in the 1880s and Grandma in the 1890s. And they were only married for a mere 65 years. They had a homestead, ranch, farm, whatever you want to call it, in the Swank area, just as you enter Bluewood Pass. In fact, it was right behind the Liberty Cafe if you go up the ridge. Grandpa described it as 160 acres of rocks and stumps. And it was hard work, folks. They came, well, pretty much everything they raised and harvested, they ate. And Grandpa hired out as a logger, a miner, a field worker, anything he could do to put food on the table. And it was kind of a subsistence living. Katie did not have it easy growing up by any means. But that growing up was real special because she got this wonderful sense of family values and a work ethic that's unparalleled that she and my aunts and my father have passed down through generations. You know their house burnt down in the Depression? No, somebody flicked an ash, and it jumped the swat, raced up the mountainside, across the field, and burnt down their house. And they had nothing left. They lived for according to Annie Kay, one very cold winter in a dirt floor garage. Grandpa did manage to get a wood cook stove and a wood fireplace thingy. And anyway, they had a water pump and an outhouse. And it was a very wonderful growing up, but a very difficult one. Katie attended Cleveland schools, graduating in 1945, and then she soon moved to Ellensburg, the big city. She took a job with the unemployment office in a little apartment on 3rd Avenue, and she brought that work ethic and those wonderful family values with her. And as Mike said, on July 1st, 1953, Kay was hired on at the Ellensburg Chamber of Commerce working for George Prescott as his secretary. In 1957, Mr. Prescott moved on, and according to the minutes of the Chamber of Commerce, they made Katie temporary manager till they could find another good man. Anyway, she was temporary for the next 31 years. Yeah, she retired in 1988, and for close to 4 decades, she was a key player in the Chamber of Commerce, Ellensburg Chamber of Commerce, in the marketing and coordination and promotion for the Ellensburg Rodeo. That's a long time, folks. She earned local and statewide recognition for her leadership and her organizational skills, her personality. She served the business community, she served the agricultural community, she served the university community, and she served the Ellensburg Rodeo with great dedication. She loved Ellensburg, she loved Kittitas County, she loved the Ellensburg Rodeo, and she lived her entire life. Kate once said about the rodeo that from July until mid-September, that was all the business the chamber did. She said, quote, people would be lined up out the door, the phones would be ringing off the hook, asking about tickets, accommodations, schedules, directions. Remember, she did this for 35 years with the old rotary phones. Her idea of technology that she celebrated was when she got an electric typewriter. Anyway, Kate said after all the visitors came in, she helped the cowboys. You know, with the same thing, accommodations, etc., etc. And then she said after the cowboys came in, the cowgirls came in, looking for the cowboys, where they were staying. And in fact, Katie once remarked that, well, it was rumored that those cowboys didn't have door handles in their back seats. Kate also worked extensively, coordinated 300 to 350 volunteers that help out with the Ellensburg Rodeo and the Kittitas County Fair. And she did a great deal of volunteering. In fact, she once remarked that the only thing I haven't done up there is shovel manure. And she didn't use the word manure. It was also Annie Kay's suggestion that the Western Art Association and the Ellensburg Rodeo combine and have an annual poster for promotion and for revenue. The rodeo thought so highly of my aunt that they dedicated an afternoon show to her in 1988 upon her retirement. She was also the Grand Marshal in the parade that year. When she retired, she was the longest tenured chamber manager in the state. And Katie was on a first-name basis with everybody in the valley and also all the VIPs. As you know, on Saturday, we're going to be flooded with politicians in the parade. And governors, state and national congressmen and congresswomen and state and national senators and other VIPs. And she was always advocating for the growth of Ellensburg, the Kittitas County. And she used the Ellensburg Rodeo as that format to politic and take the money away from, as she called them, the coasties, anybody that lived on the other side of the mountains. Anyway, and I have to tell you the truth, she did a lot of this politicking in the bar at the Emperor's Hotel, and also in the Galaxy Room at the Highway Grill. She could bend an elbow with the best of them. Wherever the posse went, so did Katie. I mean, everywhere from Pendleton to Seattle, all over the region. Always, again, promoting the Ellensburg Rodeo and marketing it. She often acted as a chaperone for the Ellensburg Royal Court. She once took the Royal Court when I think the University of Washington Huskies were playing, I couldn't find it out, either 1960 or 61, to Pasadena for the Rose Bowl parade. Anyway, Katie was dedicated to the rodeo. She coordinated all TV ads, radio spots, advertising for the rodeo. In fact, Katie was in almost every aspect of the rodeo. Again, to be nominated in 2 categories, participant and volunteer, touches my heart. And again, the family of Katie is deeply honored and thankful to the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame for this wonderful and I think well-deserved honor. It means a great deal to myself and my Aunt Katie's family because, folks, we all love my aunt with every cell and sinew in our body, and she's with us with every step and every breath, even today. Anyway, my my heart, my family's heart, to all of you, we hope you have a great rodeo and thank